15 years ago, I was a very average but keen blues guitarist. I loved playing the genre, but I knew that there were glaring holes in my playing abilities that were holding me back from becoming a confident blues improviser. Now I'm in my late 20s, and earlier this year, my first ever instructional blues guitar book became an international bestseller less than 24 hours after it was published. And I say that not to brag. I mean, not completely, I am bragging a little bit, but I say that mainly to highlight the fact that somewhere along the line from ages 12 to 27, the trajectory of my progression as a blues guitarist changed for the better. And so what was it that I did to take myself from average to advanced as a blues guitar player? In this video, I want to share with you 3 tips that if you start implementing today, could very well get you out of that blues guitar rut that you've been stuck in for years or even decades. But before we dive right in, a lot of you watching my videos are not actually subscribed. So please do me a favor, click the subscribe button, ring the notifications bell, and you'll never miss another video from me in the future. So let's get into tip number 1, which is transcribe, transcribe, transcribe. Up until 2020, I had always struggled with nailing the chord changes of a blues guitar solo when I'm improvising. I really wanted to be able to target the right notes for each chord change when it occurred. And it always amazed me how when I would listen to the likes of Robben Ford or Joe Bonamassa, they were able to do this seemingly effortlessly every single time without fail. Like their licks were always timed perfectly so they would land on the money notes at the right time. And I just had no idea how to do that myself. I would practice over backing tracks, neglect to think about the timing of my licks, and I just had no clue what notes to even target when those chord changes occurred. And of course, this left me feeling very frustrated and discouraged with my blues guitar playing. So there were definitely long periods of time where I sort of gave up on playing blues altogether, just out of sheer frustration at this glaring hole in my playing ability. However, eventually I did have the realization that if I wanted to sound like my blues guitar heroes when I was soloing, perhaps a good place to start on that journey would be to learn their own solos, note for note, and analyze them. And that's what I started to do. For about 6 months straight, day after day, I would just sit, go onto YouTube and type in things like Joe Bonamassa or Robben Ford shuffle solo, and I would listen to one solo per day, and I would work out at least part of it, maybe not the full 24-bar solo, but at least part of it to gain a better understanding of how they would time and phrase their own licks so that they would land on the right notes at the right time. And how do you do that yourself? Well, it's very simple. Just do what I did. Just go onto YouTube, type in, the name of your favorite blues guitarist at the moment, and watch some footage of them playing an improvised solo. And just listen to that solo on a loop over and over again until you've sort of got it memorized, in your head. And then when you're ready to, you can take your guitar and just break it down into small, 1 to 4 bar chunks. Maybe just focus on the first 4 bars alone. And then once you've got that down, move on to the next 2 bars. And then once you've got that, go back, play it from the beginning up until the next part. And then if you want to keep going, you can. You don't have to learn an entire solo, but if you hear a lick that you like the sound of over a particular chord change, you could just highlight even that specific part and focus on learning that. And then once you've got it down technically, you can actually analyze the note choices and look at the notes that they're landing on when the chords change. For example, are they landing on the root of the 4 chord? Are they landing on the major third of the 4 chord? These are the things you want to be paying attention to when you're transcribing solos from your blues guitar heroes. So if you start doing that multiple times a week, every week for 6 months to a year, I guarantee you the timing and phrasing of your blues guitar solos will improve dramatically. And on that note, I've actually got something that will help you out with this. I've packaged up a fun little blues guitar mini course, which you can access for free via the link in the description box, and it teaches you some licks that help you navigate the chord changes of a 12-bar blues progression. So you can access that for free via the first link in the description box. Now, tip number 2 is learn the chord progression and structure of a 12-bar blues. If you do not know that the basic structure of a 12-bar blues, generally speaking, is 4 bars of the 1 chord, 2 bars of the 4 chord, 2 bars of the 1 chord, 1 bar of the 5 chord, 1 bar of the 4 chord, and 2 bars of the 1 chord. If you do not know that, then you've got some homework to do before you can even start to think about asking questions like, what outside soloing sounds can I use in my blues playing? Or how do I play over a 1-6-2-5 progression? A lot of blues guitarists try to do this. They try to run before they can walk. And I myself was definitely guilty of this in the past. I would try to learn some really flashy improvisation techniques, but I didn't really understand the fundamentals of blues improvisation, like the chord progression and exact structure of the chords. So what would often happen in rehearsals and on gigs is I would be relying on hearing the band play the chord progression for me to know where I was in the progression, if that makes sense. I wasn't thinking, right, the 4 chords coming up in 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 chord. I was thinking, wait, what chord is coming up next? What bar am I on? Of course, that's a horrible position to be in as a blues guitarist, especially on stage. You cannot go out, get on stage at the local blues jam and be thinking, wait, what chord's coming up next? Like, what chord are we on? You can't be doing that. Like, you must know the chord progression and structure of a 12-bar blues if you want to have any hope of becoming a competent and confident blues improviser. Unfortunately, the solution is very, very simple. You can start working on this right now as you're watching this video. Go and grab a notepad, grab a piece of paper, and write out the structure of a 12-bar blues progression, and then just take your guitar and play through the chords. Don't try to solo over it, just play through the chords and count out loud as you do this. And to help you out with this, just pause this video on the screen right now. I'll put the structure of a 12-bar blues on screen so that you can just copy it out into a notepad now. So that's what I would advise doing that. Just do that a few times this week. Just write it out literally a few different times on physical sheets of paper and just play through it using chords alone. And then eventually, once you feel like you've got it memorized, start going through it without having to look at the structure, without having to look at your sheets of paper. Just go off memory alone. You want to be absolutely sure that you've got the structure of 12-bar blues 100% memorized. This is just a non-negotiable. If you want to become a good blues guitar player, you cannot skip over this. The third and final tip that I have for you guys today is forget about scales. Well, not literally. I mean, we do need scales as blues guitar players, but my point is that they are far from being the only improvisational tool that we can or should rely on when playing blues guitar solos. The basic 12-bar blues chord progression is not an example of what you would call diatonic harmony, which basically means that unlike basic major chord progressions that you might have soloed over in the past, like a 2-5-1 for example, the chords in a blues chord progression do not all come from one parent scale. Now, this is a topic that I dissect in much greater detail in my free blues improvisation masterclass, which is already on my YouTube channel. But it basically means that you can't take a one scale fits all approach to soloing over blues chord progressions. In order to play sophisticated, tasteful blues solos that highlight each chord change, you really need to start thinking about melodic structures other than scales that you can use to target the money notes in the 3 chords. Now, I used to think that just mindlessly running through minor pentatonic scale positions over and over was enough for playing tasteful blues solos, but after years and years of playing the same old stale, repetitive pentatonic licks that often had me landing on notes that clashed with the chord changes, after years of that, I knew I was doing something wrong. And this kind of takes us back to the first tip, which was all about the value of transcribing solos from blues guitar greats. It wasn't until I started transcribing solos and licks from my favorite blues players that I started to see and understand that they were not just using scales to solo with. They were using smaller, more condensed melodic structures like triads and arpeggios and chromatic enclosures as a means of targeting the money notes in the 1, 4, and 5 chords. Yes, scales were and are a part of their solos, but it wasn't just scales. It was scales, triads, arpeggios, chord voicings, even the list goes on. And when I myself started to think about using these melodic structures in my own blues improvisation alongside scales, my ability to land on the right notes at the right time, as and when the chords changed, it just drastically improved. And I started to finally feel as though I was in control of my blues guitar soloing. Again, scales are great, but blues guitar masters are using a whole lot more than just scales when they improvise, trust me on that. And to help you get started with broadening your horizons as a blues improviser, I'd just like to remind you that you can get access to a free blues guitar mini course via the link in the description box. It's going to show you how moving beyond scales can 10x your abilities as a blues improviser. So in a nutshell, those are the 3 tips that I have for transforming yourself from an average to an advanced blues guitarist. So remember to transcribe the licks and solos of your favorite blues guitar players and analyze their note choices, study and memorize the chord progression and structure of a 12-bar blues progression, and start to think about moving beyond scales and incorporating melodic structures like triads, arpeggios, and chord voicings as tools for blues guitar soloing. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope this was helpful, and I'll see you soon.